Good evening, Board Trustees. My name is Veronica Barraza. I am a parent of two children in the district, and I am a member of Morgan Hill community. I am the current elect vice president, and I'm here tonight to express my disappointment in the fact that the district has chosen to form a committee for the grade level configuration and have not included the Latino community. I read the members, I read the list, and I don't see anybody with that includes the Latino members whatsoever. I'm more concerned about the parents. The list does not reflect that. To this day, the committee has had 6 meetings, plenty of time, in my opinion, to have reached out and if they wish to do so. We, the Latino community, comprise approximately 52% of the total enrollment in the Morgan Hill district, yet the district failed to include us. So here's my question to you. Do we not matter? Is our opinion not important? Do we not count? I recently read the superintendent's report regarding charter school Morgan Hill, where he states the school continues to function as a racially segregated school. To me, the fact that we, the Latino community, were left out of this committee is more racially segregated than what he states. Thank you for your time.
Although we do a lot of different events and different kinds of things for our classified staff. So far, I just want to update you where we have been. We went to CSU Monterey Bay working with their education program. They have a special ed intern program that's of particular interest to us since those are hard to fill positions. We've also participated with Santa Clara University, the on-site interviews, and actually conducted our own interviews coming back here and have made some employment offers already. We attended the Fresno State recruitment fair, again working with their department, and were able to recruit and hire one B-class certified teacher for our DNA program, so we're very excited. These are some early hires, and I think when I originally brought the item, I let you know that this is a particularly competitive season, so we're very proud of these initial recruiting efforts and getting some teachers on board for next year. I just returned last week from Mexico City, where I flew to participate in the California-Mexico Visiting Teachers Program. It was a very interesting experience, the first time for me that we had participated, and I think the first time for our district, although the program has been in existence since the late 1960s. So it's a program whereby teachers can volunteer to be part of an exchange, and they interview with interested districts to bring them over, and it's a 1 to 3 year commitment on the part of the visiting teacher. And so I was able to meet some very interesting teachers for a wide variety of reasons that like to come to the United States. And we have made an offer to one teacher who will be joining us in the fall in our dual immersion program. Coming up is the Santa Clara County Recruitment Fair. That's the largest by far event. That's this Saturday. We're taking a team of 11 principals and classified staff to support that hiring effort. We'll also be going up to Chico next month and Sonoma State next month, and I believe that, and Cal Poly. Cal Poly is always a good place to recruit our ag teachers, so we're very hopeful there that we'll get that. I also just wanted to remind you that part of the consent calendar, every board meeting, is a personnel order. And so, even though it's part of consent and we don't spend a lot of time, I think that it is important to look at resignations, retirements as they come in. We will be celebrating our retirees in May. But the resignations that come in for each of those, of course, that's a vacancy that we're recruiting to fill. In addition, there may be approved leaves. Those are also vacancies that we will seek to fill. I also wanted to clarify that term appointment does not truly mean an appointment. What there is action. You're taking action that basically you're approving the entire process, but it's a hiring process. There has been postings in the case of classified staff, testing, eligibility lists, panel interviews, offers of employment, reference checks, all of those things. And then, of course, a hire is made. So when it says appointment, it's gone through a thorough panel interview process.
spoken description of the situation, event, etc. So that being said, last board meeting there were some comments made, and I wanted to get some clarification. You mentioned, Bob, that perhaps some board members need to be more attentive at board meetings in regards to the grade school configuration. And I went back to look and see if maybe I missed it, because I felt, to be as informed as possible. I think that was brought up at a homeschool president's meeting, and I was not at that meeting. So I don't remember the grade school configuration being brought up to us. From what I understand, that it's nice to be informed, and I hope moving forward information gets to us so we can make informed decisions. I asked at the last board meeting to bring up in public session. Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead. I asked to bring up the superintendent's contract in relation to prior approval before he attends certain events, or board approval for expenditures, and we haven't talked about it in 2 weeks. I don't know if he plans on bringing it up, but it's a public contract, it's public money. Part of our norms and the governance team is the main focus on student achievement and recognize students. Last board meeting, we tried to bring up something forward in the interest of students, and we weren't able to move forward. And this is a report for me, just to get it out and make it clear that our main focus is student achievement and recognize students. I just want to put that out. I have one question.
Anybody else?
I think you said that one.
Excuse me? Thank you, President Benveto. I have some good news. I received an email I'd like to share with our community. This is regarding somebody's just developed. I got an email from the Santa Clara County School Board Association to find out that our president, Bob Benevento, has been named the president of the Santa Clara County School Board Association for the coming year. In fact, he's going to be treated at the April 29th event, the Hoffman Dinner, April 29th in Mountain View at Michael's in the Shoreline area. And I will attend, and I hope that as many of our board members will attend as well. I don't know what's happening. I do want to continue my report, please. So this is good news, and I want to congratulate you, Bob, on behalf of me, and hopefully on behalf of the board and the community as well.
Thank you very much. Actually, the transition won't be until the May meeting.
All right.
It's okay.
That's my
We'll come
first
to the
point.
April 29th dinner anyway.
We're going to come. The second point is I attended, along with Superintendent Vitando, the Mesa robotics competition over at Martin Murphy. And in fact, we actually hosted this event for about 5 or 6 different schools in the area. And I thought it was a wonderful event. We did well. We had actually 2 teams who had only really 7 days to prepare. They actually started preparation for the competition, and 7 days later they're actually competing with their own self-made robots. The teams were very collaborative. I noticed it was just a wonderful learning environment. We had not only the principal, but also 3 science faculty there for pretty much all of Saturday. And I was very, very pleased to see this, and again to see the interest on the part of our students in STEM activities like this, particularly at the middle school level. So I was very, very happy to see that. And the final thing I wanted to report on is I have begun my studies for the Masters in Governance. I completed the first 2 programs, which are Governance and Student Learning and Achievement. I've learned quite a bit. I'm hopeful that I can apply what I've learned really in all of the work going forward. As I said before, there's a lot to learn as a new board member. It's a very complicated job. There's lots of regulations. There's lots of nuances to learn, and I'm hoping to start applying the learning immediately. I also hope to complete the balance of the MIG sometime this year, hopefully by June. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I have a couple of quick reports. I went to the district technology meeting this past week, and you probably have been hearing a lot of talk about the Chromebooks and the rollout, and it's quite extensive. I do have a complete list of each site. This month is a big month for the high schools. The high school grades getting their Chromebooks. So things are happening within the district relative to the Chromebook rollouts. A lot of other exciting things that I'll ask you to reach out to me and I can share those with you. At the last board meeting, I also mentioned I went to Dartmouth Middle School. It's in the Union School District, and I saw something that I just never have seen before relative to STEM. So their focus on STEM really brought a lot of kids directly in the classroom working on things like, again, 3D with laser simulating, brain surgery. And I asked the CTO and the superintendent, how did you do all this? How did you bring all this equipment and this STEM focus? And they partnered with an organization called Project Lead the Way. And I'm the liaison at the Chamber of Commerce Education, and there was a presentation at the last meeting for Project Lead the Way. So let me just give you a synopsis of that. Dr. Vince Bertram, he's the owner and founder of Project Lead the Way. He's also the author of One Nation Undertaught. And it really tackles the deficiencies in STEM in the primary and secondary schools for some 15 years. So he's done this for quite a while. He created superb PD programs for teachers. That's professional development. He's in Project Lead the Way is in 6,000 schools across the United States. And they're crucial in laying the foundation of very successful blueprints for STEM. So I related back to a couple of board meetings where Trustee Gerard said Barrett School improved its Latino community from 37% to 66% in science, all because of the focus on STEM. And between that and the presentation I heard at the chamber, I really started to think. So in my opinion, it's just not enough to come up with, some solutions here and there. You have to work with students, parents, teachers, admins, universities, businesses, foundations in order to really affect change. Now, since 1960, students in America have been slipping on what they actually learn in our schools, especially in STEM. According to the National Assessment of Education Progress, that's an organization, only 26% of high school seniors in 2010 were at or above proficiency in math. And worse, 3% scored at an advanced level in math and a pitiful 1% in science. So no wonder so few high school students go to pursue STEM in college. That was really brought forth to me at the Chamber of Commerce educational meeting when the ex-chancellor, dean of Gavilan College, Steve Kinsella, says, we tried to bring in STEM and engineering courses in the college, but the students coming in from the local high schools weren't prepared. That just, my heart dropped when I heard that. And he went on to say that they had to spend, the high school students had to spend a year trying to bring up and get credits in certain areas for engineering, and that's why the program never took off for many years at Gavilan College. So, with reference to the students finding the greatest potential for success after graduation, Forbes highlights that the most in-demand college majors, the fields that will present our graduates with the most job prospects and the highest earnings are in engineering. Engineering and math fields dominated the list, with engineering concentrations making up 1/3 of the most valuable majors. Biomedical engineering ranked number 1, software engineering 4, followed by environmental engineering 5, civil engineering 6, and petroleum engineering 7. So the focus on this, the STEM gap here is creating a lot of need in business, and they say by 2018, STEM jobs are expected to grow at a rate nearly double than that of other fields. In fact, 17% versus 9.8. It's an estimated 1 million STEM jobs will go unfulfilled because the workforce does not possess the skills. So what Stephen Kinsella said was that the students, after a year trying to keep up, trying to get these credits to go into engineering, really gave up, and they basically went into other fields. So all of this begs the question, why don't our schools do better? So we need to develop a blueprint for enabling students to fall in love with STEM. This is what I saw at the Dartmouth School. And when I asked the CTO, they did all this, even with their measured bond, within a year. And they did it with the help of Project Lead the Way, which went out and got funding for the school to bring in all of these equipment and focus. So the time for talk and ineffectual actions is really gone. And so what I would like to do is throw down a challenge to this district and the district staff and the board that we really need to look at how we can start ramping up the focus in STEM. This is how we're going to better meet the needs of our graduating seniors. And so I was around when President Kennedy was president. He threw down a challenge in the United States, and he says, in the next decade, we're going to put a man on the moon. Bingo. 5 years later, we got a man on the moon. So I'm asking at this particular time in the Morgan Hill Unified School District, I would love to form a focus group to really see how we can partner up with various organizations to start ramping up our STEM at our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, it was my pleasure on March 14th to attend the Synopsis Science Fair at the San Jose Convention Center. I go to turn my mic on, okay. Morgan Hill was represented by students from Sobrato High School, Martin Murphy Middle School, and San Joaquin Gwen Environmental Science Academy. The quality of the projects this year, I've been going for the last 5 years, and the quality of the projects overall, including our schools, gets better and better every year. It's absolutely amazing what these kids do. Our teachers were there from our schools. The crowd was great. It was at the South Hall there at the Convention Center. And I especially want to thank, we have a community citizen here by the name of Lynn Leibschutz. And Lynn has played a very vital role in not only encouraging our teachers in our schools, but also in organizing this fair. And I also want to thank our Santa Clara County Science Resource teacher, who helps our teachers at San Joaquin Gwen and other schools. And her name is Sandy Yellenberg. And I got a chance to get around to every single student that represented our schools. And I'm not sure, probably close to 30 students. But it was amazing. I also want to let you know that you recognized the TAC group at the last meeting. Well, last Thursday, they had their handout or their giveaway, of which about 86 teachers showed up. And we gave out over $5,000 in supplies, different types of, and it just keeps getting bigger. And I want to second what Steve had said about the Live Oak Award for the most caring school, high school. That was amazing. I mean, just to see all those teachers from Live Oak, the students, the young lady that spoke to us tonight, she was there, the community members, it was great. And when you have an audience there of about 1,000 people, and you hear about all these cornerstone assets, and then to hear, and especially the statement was made, it was an honor to be present and watch the Live Oak community accept this award for the strong role that the students took to build a community free of bias and where cultural identity is promoted. We were extremely proud, and we are proud of all of our high schools. Thank you.
Trustee Rebush.
I'm honored to have been asked to sit on a program advisory.
Dropped. Go to the agenda. Item G4, grade level configuration update. This is an information item only, no action to be taken. Mr. Superintendent.
So at the last meeting, we had a recommendation coming from the committee. The committee has since met and has done some outreach, and Dr. Martinez Palmer is here to speak to the changes.
So the committee, after the last board meeting, met on March 17th and had a discussion about our next steps. There were already plans to do parent outreach and community outreach at all of our schools, including the DLAC. And so we planned the timeline and we discussed in length the content of those meetings and what parents might be interested in knowing, hearing about. And the committee feels strongly that community input and feedback is necessary, as we also heard from the board that was important to you. So after much discussion around timing, timeline, and speaking with the superintendent and some administrators and teachers and parents, it was decided that we would not move forward with a phase-in, considering the timeline, some very valid concerns about, we talk a lot about social emotional connection for kids, and there was a concern about having one cohort of kids moving into a middle school and having their peers come in after. And so that was something that we really thought about. We supported the 6-8 configuration based on all the research, and that was one compelling point that we felt strongly about. There was also a feeling that there needed to be some more time for planning, and that planning could be better done after hearing from the community. So the community meetings are scheduled, and they are on the green piece of paper here. You can see they're back-to-back meetings. And so please feel free to come and listen. The purpose of those committees will be to present the rationale for the recommendation from the committee, engage parents in questions and answers, and also to seek their input in terms of what we need to be thinking about for successful implementation in the future. Our goal is to So our goal is to come back in April. This is why we scheduled them so quickly, because we really would like to come back before the end of the school year, hopefully at the end of April, with a summary of what we've learned and with a recommendation for the board.
Do you have any questions? Any clarifying questions?
Yeah, I do. I want to continue my comments and questions from last week, from last meeting, I should say. Especially after having gone to Masters in Governance, the governance section, I feel that it's very, very important that the board be very involved in this decision. This is quite a change. This is not simply an action plan. This is something that really requires board consultation. I think it was a mistake, really, not to get the board involved really at the outset, because now we've established a wonderful committee. I commend the committee on their work. I certainly commend our staff for the work that they've done. I happen to have done some research of my own, and I have a lot of questions. I'd like to ask some questions, if I may. And I guess the first is really in terms of how this started. I tried to ask this last time, and I was cut off. It's important for me to know, from a governance standpoint, how this decision came about. The discussions that I had at the Master of Governance meeting in San Diego, I talked to numerous superintendents, board presidents, board members. They were basically stunned that this has gone on without the board being informed, without the board being consulted. This is not simply a minor action plan. This is something that will affect the education of every student in the district, ultimately. When it was brought last time, I thought it was a matter of choice. I misunderstood. I thought this was an option, and it's actually a mandate. We're going to a situation of actually changing the way our schools are configured. I've actually looked at the research myself, and while it is inconclusive in terms of which configuration matters, there's certainly discussion that the kind of middle school and the kind of support we have for students certainly makes a difference. However, the research that I've looked at, a study from Harvard, a study from Columbia, these are recent studies, show that the most, from an academic achievement standpoint, the most successful configuration based on studies of, I'm sure you've seen them, studies of Florida, studies in New York City, very extensive studies, is actually the K-8. Now, I'm not saying that I'm against this at all, but I think it's very, very important that the board, I think it's an opportunity for the board to have discussions among ourselves. We are a new board, and I do not want us to become a board that simply checks the box or sees themselves as some kind of a rubber stamp. That would be really a denial of our responsibilities as a governing body. And so this is certainly a strategic priority. It's certainly a priority. It's the kind of thing that a board should be involved in. And so with that, I'd really like to, maybe if I'm not going to find out how this was hatched, I do have many, many questions. I could ask them now, or we could agree to have a study session, which I think would be very useful. It's not my intention to be oppositional, but I have to really uphold the oath that I took when I became a board member on December 9th. That'd be lax in my responsibility. I certainly have gotten quite a number of calls, emails, unfortunately, all of which people wanted me to keep confidential, so I can't share them with you, unfortunately. But there were a number of concerns from the special needs community in particular, wondering how they would be impacted. I don't have answers to that. I certainly want to be a board member who could be supportive of everything we do, because I think it's very, very important that we proceed collectively in unity. It does me no pleasure, it does no good for the community to have splits, have 4-3 votes or 5-2 votes or whatever. It's very, very important that we get to understand what's going on. So I have 18 questions. I mean, I could ask them. We could be here for quite some time. Or we could agree to have a study session, which would be my preference, so that we could maybe in a daytime or a shorter time frame that's focused on this, go through it. And not from the standpoint of trying to tear apart the good work the committee has done, but really to understand what we're getting ourselves into. It's very, very important we understand this because unless we understand it as a board, it's impossible for us to support it when we get questions. We can certainly refer all the questions to the superintendent, but I think the community would like to see that the board is actually behind the strategic initiatives that the board has voted for. So I don't know how to proceed. I have so many questions here. Certainly one of my requests would be during the outreach meetings, which I guess can't be stopped. I'm not sure that there's a rush to do them, really. But I would like, certainly, that they be positioned not such that there's a recommendation from the district, because I haven't been consulted at all. It's my responsibility, I believe, as a board member, to endorse this, to vote on this, to be consulted. I think that's a central part of why I'm here. If not, I think my role is primarily a ceremonial one, which I'm not interested in serving, if that's the case. Again, I'm not trying to be oppositional, but I'm really stumped. I think it's a governance question. I think this was done wrongly. I'd like to give our staff a chance to repair what I consider to be a misstep and to go back to the beginning. And the only way, you can't unring the bell, but I think the only thing to do would be to schedule a study session, possibly maybe on a Saturday, like a 9 to 2, or maybe a couple evenings, sometime in April. Certainly a public meeting that people could come. Again, I'm not trying to recruit an army of 100 angry parents, but I really would like to have a very reasonable discussion about this, so I can understand what it is, so we can understand the choices that we have. Because, I was thinking about what are some possibilities. For example, we have Martin Murphy, which is in San Jose. It's a mile away from Western Digital. What if we had, instead of a middle school at Martin Murphy, what if we had a small high school, or maybe a 7-12 configuration there? Might that encourage an organization like Western Digital, which is one of the leaders in storage in the world, 3,500 employees, some of whom are executives living here in Morgan Hill? Might that possibly encourage them to fund, in terms of hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, programs in that school? It could be renamed for one of their founders. Who knows? I think that we need to look very, very carefully at what we're doing. And I get the impression that perhaps one of the drivers behind this is the fact that we have declining enrollment. We have needs to be wise in terms of how we use our facilities. And I would not want to make it a decision about academic learning, about student learning and achievement based on real estate. I'd like to make it really based on two things. First of all, what's in the best interest of students for their achievement? What's in the best interest of closing the achievement gap? What's in the best interest of special needs students, our core groups, all the LCAP groups? And then secondly, what can we do to make good use of our facilities, to make the best use of our facilities, given that we have the wonderful thing, thanks to Trustee Wolf and his colleagues a few years ago, for having a Measure G. How can we wisely use those funds? So my desire is to slow this train down. Let's not derail it, but let's slow it down and let's do some thinking. And we have a wonderful board here. We have 2 teachers of the year. We have 2 business people who are also very active parents. We have a wonderful volunteer who are on the board. We have a wonderful president here who's very prominent in county and state affairs and has many contacts we could utilize. So I'd like us to use our intellectual capital on this board to use this as an opportunity to do some good work. So I don't know how to action this, but it is my request that we slow the train down and do something that is going to be smart. We don't have to spend months and months. We don't have to have lots of difficult conversations. But frankly, as a board member, I think it's my duty to raise these points. Thank you.
David, I think you brought up some pretty valid points. But I just want to reiterate, you did mention that working board, and you've mentioned several times rubber stamping. And just because something's not mentioned in the open session doesn't mean that either research hasn't been done. And as anything, you can find research for or against this being a positive thing for education of students, right? So, or it doesn't mean that us as board members, fellow board members, haven't talked to the staff and asked questions. And I kind of take offense to the word rubber stamping, because I just want to reiterate to you, just because something's not done in open session doesn't mean that the questions aren't being asked. Well,
I'm not trying to offend anybody here, Trustee Porter Jensen. What I'm trying to do is simply point out that that as a board, the only time we actually are able to make any decision is here in public sessions. And if something hasn't been presented to me in a public session, it really doesn't exist because I really can't discuss openly with my colleagues and really, as I said, tap into the intellectual capital of more than 2. Otherwise, I'm violating the Brown Act. So I do think it's improper or unwise or maybe simply an oversight. I don't know which. But I do think that staff should have brought this back to the board before a committee was established. I mean, the meeting started after I was sworn in. And it might be a great idea. I mean, but I want to reiterate the need for us to have proper governance and also to use this as an opportunity for us to work as a team, collectively. And so I'm not trying to offend, but frankly, the alternative, if we don't take a stop out at this point, this is a wonderful opportunity to do this, by the way. Then I'm afraid that people, certain people on the board may feel defeated or give up. And I don't want to be part of a board where everybody's not engaged. I want people to be engaged and to feel that they all count. And here's an opportunity to do that. So again, no offense intended. I'm sorry if you took it that way, but for me, I I came on the board to try to make a difference.
And I think we all have opportunities every day to engage, right?
And primarily here, because this is where I can do my best work.
Thank you. So you'll be meeting with the community in a series of meetings over the coming weeks and months. I'm sure you'll be reporting back to us perhaps in the April 1 meeting.
My goal was to, because these meetings are all scheduled for the next 2 weeks, to come back and share the committee's committed. We're meeting after the meetings to kind of look at what we collected, talk about patterns, trends, concerns, and then report back to the
So correct me if I'm wrong, but actually ideas for change in the school can emanate pretty much anywhere. It could be a board member, it could be a staff member, it could be a citizen of the community. Is that correct?
So, yes, but I also want to, because we have new board members, the grade level configuration task force or committee was written into our LCAP last year as an action that would be taking place in the year 2015. So I was implementing what we said we would do.
Okay, so we slowed the train down. I'm sure, Trustee Gerard, that if you want to contact time,
We'd be happy to
address
receive
some
your
questions.
questions.
If I may,
You can email
I will.
to Mr. Patondo, and I'm happy to.
And then you know, this is not casting concrete. We're still going to continue
We're
this. At some point, the board will have to make a decision whether or not we're going to go forward or not. Correct?
Yes, I mean, the committee was made up of different stakeholders, and so we had an opportunity to look at a variety of resources. We still want to visit schools, so they've made an initial recommendation. In all my years of education, that's the responsibility of the educators of the system.
Misinterpreted, it wasn't perhaps stated carefully or clearly. And I think at this point in time now we have some direction. We know which way you're going. We know that we've slowed the train down, to use the trustee's reference, so that we'll not be opening until the 16-17 school year at the earliest. Right.
Or longer.
So we will come back and we will be discussing this in open session. But certainly, if there are any clarifying questions that the trustee needs answered, you can certainly respond to yourself.
one other question I had, and I think I want to really take note of this, and that's it's not easy for community members to come to the board, and that's in terms of the comment made in terms of the composition of the committee. And I don't know who's on the committee. I've seen the names, but I don't know who they are. And if there's a way to add additional members who are from the English learner community or from the special needs community, I think that would help, no matter which direction we go in, gain additional community support for whatever we do. So I think whatever we do, we want to make sure that we're all on the same page and working together, because we don't have any time to waste. Every day that a child goes to school that's the day they have. Every year they go through, that's the year they have. And I don't want to slow progress down, but I just want to make sure we're being inclusive and being smart.
Trustee Padilla, you have hands.
I did. As David was speaking, I was kind of looking at his questions, and those are pretty good questions. I'm wondering if he could, so that he's not rallying the back, send them to you, and when they get answered, you can distribute them to the board.
Absolutely. And we may, depend on the questions.
Sure.
I think I heard probably, you said 18, I heard at least 9 of them during the conversation.
So many more.
Okay, so yeah, just forward them to me.
Okay, Trustee, you should answer.
I'm basically reiterating what Rick's suggestion, and I think that in the interest of keeping the conversation moving, electronically sharing questions, if we filter them first through the superintendent, would be important. And I command this schedule along with the LCAP meetings and the DLAC meetings and the open houses and negotiations. There's a huge set of tasks that have to happen, and it's always crunch time come this spring, and then ramping up to plan for the next year. So this is an aggressive timeline, and I appreciate what Mr. Gerard is saying, that we do want to have, as open a conversation as we can, but we also trust your professional judgment, and I applaud the work and initiative of the staff because this is going to be a very, very busy spring for everyone. Thank you, Norma.
I think at the last meeting we had what the statement was made that about 63% of the districts in the country have a 6, 7, 8 configuration. So I'm sitting at home the other day and I'm saying, I've got to find out what's the percent in Santa Clara County. I just have to do this. So about 2 hours later, after I went through the 22 school districts that were not high school districts or were not really small districts, I came up with these figures. Of the 22 districts, 14 of them had a 6 through 8 configuration. 6 of them had a 7 and 8 configuration. 2 had a 5 through 8 configuration. And actually one of the districts, which has 3 middle schools, intermediates, whatever you want to call them, had 2 7 and 8s and 1 5 through 8. So I was almost ready to call up that school and say, how come you have one of your schools 5 through 8? I mean, what was the reason there? But anyway, the percentages came out to 64%. So it was 1% off in Santa Clara County what the national average is. And I just want to bring that as a point of information because I thought, where are we? You know, where do we rank with some of the others or in comparison with what we do? But I also want to second what Donna said about the time involved and taking the time to set up all these meetings and arrange and involve the Hispanic community. You're to be commended for and in bringing that input back to us. Thank you very much.
One more thing to say. Sure. You mentioned how last meeting there were some rationale and we weren't quite clear. But I want to personally thank Jim Abels for stepping up and clarifying what the community did and what the recommendation was. And it made sense. And so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Lecture, it was a long day. So thank you.
Thanks, Tina.
Thanks.
Great job. Okay, moving along, item G6. This is a measure.
Where we are now with the beginning of the agenda. And after the last 2 or 3 board report sessions, I would like to ask the board to give strong consideration of moving it back again. And for several reasons. I would have liked to have asked Gino tonight several questions on lead the way, because it sounds really great. And or anybody else who presents. And tonight we went about a half hour on board reports. And I just thought, if there are items like at the last board meeting where we had 7, 8, 10 people who wanted to speak to an item, whatever that item may be. So therefore we're taking half hour, 35, 40 minutes, and the audience is sitting out there doing that. And we went, well, I've been on the board for a little over 4 years, and we went about 3 years and 9 months with having board reports towards the end of the meeting. So I don't know how if we have to make this into a motion at a future board meeting or whatever has to take place or get input from the rest of the board and see what you think, but I think we need to consider moving it to where we previously had it, which was about right now.
Thank you, Trustee. Anybody else have any thoughts?
I think it's pretty beneficial for the public to actually be present during board reports, personally. But maybe we can limit the time to 3 minutes, like we do the other speakers.
I certainly think it's good to keep it in the front of the meeting so people could learn about what we're doing. And I think I would hope instead of giving a time limit that people would be considerate of time.
But that hasn't happened.
Well, we're a new team, and we're going through our storming phase, and we will soon move on to another phase, I'm sure. We're a very diverse board. We have 3 new members. And I think that over time we'll get past this. And I think we might revisit this later. I certainly don't enjoy sitting for a long period of time when there's important business and certainly people from the community who want to speak. But I'm hoping we can find some balance here and self-regulate. Why don't we? My suggestion is to really table putting this on the docket here and maybe revisit it in the summer when things begin to calm down, and hopefully we can come to a consensus and not have to be too bureaucratic with too many laws and rules. I don't know if that would meet your approval or not.
Trustee, I
It's not,
can't recall what it was when it was suggested by former trustee Lawson to move it, whether it was a board action item or just a courtesy as a request.
Summertime. I think it was just moved because for years they were all, I mean, years and years and years.
So we can check.
I recall that it was a consensus of the board that we try it during the summer.
That's true.
And then we really didn't reevaluate that.
I mean, we're here to serve the public, so I think it's important that we give them a chance to speak without having to sit through 35 minutes of our report. So if we are going to consolidate it and stick with that and be respectful to the community we serve, then I think that's fine. But if it doesn't happen, I think we need to revisit it. Because I agree with you, there's kids here. Do you have something to say?
Go ahead.
I thought you were
Okay. We also might consider content, since I believe the original intent was to be committee reports and not an extension of your personal ideas, new ideas that you want to propose. It's supposed to be a committee report. We could look into that. We can get format, we can get contact, we can get time. That make sense?
I think Donna has that.
Donna, do you have something?
I just read the handout that we have in our packet. And in the center of the tricolor, didn't we get this at our board orientation and training? And it says board reports should focus on school functions, community events, board/trustee development activities such as management, government items, and legislation that affect educational issues. And it was very interesting about lead the way. I mean, maybe that could be an agendized type of item for those kind of reports. But anyway.
I don't know that we could talk about each individual where it would fall, but really the board's
Well,
prerogative.
let me suggest this, because actually this would be a point of reference of two items. And that is, if we look at board bylaw 9322, how items are placed on the agenda, that may be helpful for us to have some guidance. We hadn't already addressed them in terms of what the board member may do to request that a matter be placed on the agenda in a regular meeting. And if you follow those guidelines, maybe we can talk about it.
What policy is that about?
9322. Using that as a guide, we come back and talk about future items like Project Lead the Way, which is a very exciting concept. Okay? I don't know that we have a resolution to the question here with Ron's issue, but
I have another point of new business. It's actually no longer new business, but it is the third time I am bringing this up. And I am not the representative from San Jose, but I thought we did have a consensus that we would have a meeting in May in San Jose, and I really would like to make sure that happens. San Jose is 12% of our district, at least, and it's not easy for even people in Morgan Hill to come here. I'd certainly like to do it during the school year, not during the summer. I'd like it to be advertised so that the Los Pasteos and Martin Murphy parents and other people from Morgan Hill can also go out there. There's some great schools out there. I think Superintendent Patando mentioned that most likely Martin Murphy, where we were on Saturday morning, might be a great site. There, of course, is the question of Chromebooks and all, but there was a world before Chromebooks too. So everybody has printers. So I don't exactly know how much of a difficulty that would be, but I would like to put that back for consideration. I don't know if it needs to be agendized or we simply amend the schedule in some other way, but I would like to make that happen.
Yeah, the last meeting we were going to bring some costs to the board to talk about that. No matter what the costs would be or the considerations, I think you wanted to hear what those might be. But certainly, if it's the board's consensus that we do it in May, we'll schedule it in May. I see 4 nods.
Would
So,
please the board have a meeting in May of that, say Martin or
Yeah, I'm just, I'm curious about what it takes logistically to move. It's not in opposition to having a meeting north. I just know that a lot falls on Janie, and I know there is some cost involved with moving. So I'm just curious.
yeah, it's staff time, but we would implement it. It's we certainly aren't going to bring these tables and things like that, or these chairs. So it might be a little uncomfortable, which may be a way to shorten the meetings.
That might be a good idea.
That's true. That's true.
Well, over the years, Beth's done a lot of things.
bringing up the PA system, we'd have to lease one or parking lot.
And you know what, how
Right.
you just said, oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to add that we used Music Tree for the Britain, which was a cost too. $600 for Music Tree. So there is a cost. I could imagine it's not going to be more than $2,000 for staff time and extra. But the nods are saying that it's valuable, and we'll go with it. We'll have to find some budget item that we could shift around for.
Hey, one other thing I just like
Not
to
more
say.
than
I have a question for you. Just how you just said, the board consensus, we move forward with that. We didn't give you the opportunity to do that with what Ron said, because, in my opinion, but I don't think anyone else.
Oh, about moving the
Yeah.
reports?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it was a proposal.
It was. He said, I'd like to strongly consider that we do that. So Amy likes to keep it front, so does David. I like to keep it front. So the report that we had considered was reporting out on things that you've done that benefit the district. I think when Claudia wanted to bring this forward so that we can tell people that we're engaged in the community and doing things. So I like it in the front. This just need it.
Majority. Well, we don't have it as an action item.
No, I don't think you're voting. What you're
So you
the
usually
question
say,
came
you wanna
up
bring
of
it
how did
forward.
we get to this point where we're moving in the front? We got to this point, as I recall, a little bit fuzzy, but I recall that the board felt that we wanted to try it during the summer to see how it went, because there was concern that it might change some of the public ability to speak to items on the agenda, expand the length of time. The other thing is that should be a consideration. This is back to the students. Students are our issue. We have civic students that don't get to hear one action item several meetings in a row, not one, because they're gone. We release them after now. So that is what we noticed right away, staff, is that they're here for civics points, and they're hearing reports, which is good stuff, promotional stuff, things like that, but they don't get to hear any action. It's really the board's prerogative on where that would be.
I think I asked last board meeting, what's the difference between consensus and approval?
Approval is an action item. I'm looking for some direction, and the board president and I work on the agenda and the order of things, and we put the items in there. This is one of those pieces that we would shift if the board felt that it needs to be shifted back. But we didn't shift it back because we didn't hear this concern from any board members in the past.
And I didn't weigh in on it either.
I'm not taking an advocacy either way, except for the student issue and the concern that we really try and stick to what the board has asked in their own governance norms and rules.
And I would submit this, because I'm probably one of the more guilty parties in the past. You guys that have been on the board in the past will remember when the meetings were held late, and I would want to read my typewritten report, which would be a length, a page in length or so. Don Moody would give me the eye and say, "Really? It's 10 o'clock. You really want to read all that?" And I would say, "No report. Move on," because it wasn't of great importance. It wasn't much to say. If it was significant, I would then say it, but if it wasn't, let it go. But that was the benefit of the way Don ran the meeting. He just give me the eye, and I thought that was the end of the meeting, because the end of the meeting said, hey, it's time constraint, people are tired, it's a late night, and by the way, there are no actions taken on board reports as opposed to, things like this, that if we get into the evening, if they're report discussions, as we get later, we don't make decisions. So I think having them for the end would be actually.
Well, since I brought this up, I would assume that it will be about a year in July that we transition over. So let's let it just fly until the end of the school year. We can, want to bring it up, we can. Let's just take it from there.
One board I've experienced did have a written report that was just made available to the public from each board member on their activities, and they didn't give a verbal of that, but that's just another consideration.
So just like in the employee group area, that's interesting to the public, and that's informative to the public. And I think so is the board reports informative to the public, and just as valuable as the employee group forum. So if you look at it and focus on what's best for the community and the parents, I probably in my almost 4 years of going to the board meetings, I like it being towards the front because I can hear a lot from the board members, and that was important to me prior to joining the board. So I'm of the opposite, leaving it exactly where it is.
So we seem to have. Okay. Let's move on.
Are you doing future agenda items?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I'm not sure how to restate this. The item that I would like to put on the agenda, it's a pretty simple item. It's called Community Outreach Meetings by Trustees. It was sent out by our superintendent to the board. I said it exactly like this at the last board meeting. Do you understand the item that I'm talking about, Mr. Superintendent and Mr. President?
I do not recall. Is it an email?
It's the Friday folder. You really don't recall this?
No, I really don't.
Are you talking about something in the confidential memo that's?
It's not a confidential memo. It's in the Friday board update. I can give you.
That's a confidential. No, sometimes you write confidential, sometimes you don't.
Right.
Oh, it didn't say confidential.
Well, let's make an assumption, even if it did. I'm asking to bring it in to a closed session for discussion, whether it's a confidential item or not.
So actually, Gino, in response to you, I think I actually answered your question a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
There is a procedure, it's called Board Bylaw 9322,
Mm-hmm.
and then it says, Board President and Superintendent shall decide whether an agenda item is appropriate for discussion in a closed session.
Sure.
So if you would prepare what you wish to have submitted, turn it into the next agenda prep meeting, close it for you. Fair enough?
Yeah, write it out first.
Or you can even cut and paste it.
Here's the policy.
You can even cut and paste it. Fair enough?
It's fair enough.
Yeah, I have something.
Okay.
So Donna just pulled up the new that was attached to our yellow sheet that I asked, where did this come from? And superintendent said, well, one of the trustees wanted to bring it forward. So I'd like some clarity. Which trustee? Great. That being said, this new norms and standards for the Board of Education is not the same as it was a few months ago. And so I look on the back and I see it's latest revision January 15, 2015. And I don't recall us talking about revising the norms and standards of our district.
I'm sorry, I did that when I put the new board members on there.
So it was revised January.
I had to change the new board members to
The
our
roster.
But the
And then they wanted me to add the LCAP goals because that was the goal.
Right. So, I think maybe that should have been brought to us too, so that we all are aware that we're changing moving forward.
Is that the only thing that
That's just
No, because in the past we had different unified school goals, and on the new board orientation wasn't like this one. Goal.
But the goal of the district is that, I mean,
No,
just
just-
the district
I
and our
want-
names changed, right? Nothing else is different.
You're concerned with that? We upgraded the brochure with the LCAP goals and the board member names? Is that what I'm understanding?
But the rest of it is identical, right?
I don't know, I haven't, it's one of those kid games, what's different in this? So we're just getting it today, and the new board norms and standards have changed without the board knowing, and moving forward, being informed. So I have a concern that when you change the norms and standards without the governance team, that you're kind of
By adding the
LCAP goals.
LCAP
I don't know what else. So we're just getting this today, and part of our conversation earlier was to be more informed. It'd be nice to get information in advance. So that's all I'm saying. I mean, I'm not going to go more in depth about this, but moving forward, I think it's important that when norms and standards have changed, that we're included, so we know that it's been updated, or at least send it out to us and hey, we changed it.
President Benevento. This actually brings another potential new business item, and I think it might be useful for us to have what is called a conversation meeting. And I learned about this at Masters of Governance. I'm sure Trustee Wolf and Trustee Badillo know what that is. And that would be maybe a separate meeting where we talk about norms and protocols, because what I'm seeing here is maybe some confusion, not just about what's on the paper, but really in terms of how we operate. And I'd like us to have a real, since there's 3 new board members, I think it'd be very useful for us to spend some time really going over our norms and protocols, possibly making some changes. But I know we did part of this at our retreat, but I'm witnessing an opportunity, again, in the service of, I'm going to be here for 4 years, hopefully. And I would like, to give everybody a chance to really buy in to what is on that paper, and whether there's a change of a comma or some names or LCAP goals. To me, I think the more important thing is, do people buy into the content of this? And if not, let's work it so it works for us. These are our norms and protocols. The 7 of us and the associated staff that sit here with us, and I want to make sure that we all have agreement on that. And if we don't, then we ought to change it. But I'm a fan of everything that's written be useful. So I'd like to propose that at some point in the next 2-3 months, we set aside some time. We're going to have a lot of meetings, but I think it'll be a good investment of time, because I sure don't want to have situations where we go home from these meetings feeling like it was not a useful meeting. And I certainly don't want the community to feel that either, more importantly.
So, before I can finish my future board agenda items, I brought it up before, I'm bringing it up again because it's a public contract with the superintendent. Under benefits, number 7, professional activities, the item says, with advance board approval, the superintendent may attend appropriate professional meetings at local, county, state, and national levels. Actual and necessary expenses of attendance shall be paid by the district if so approved. So I know our bylaw, and I will be submitting it in writing tonight so that we can put it on future agenda.
Any others?
I'd just like to focus on moving the kids forward in the right direction.
Thank you, Amy.
Agenda item.
Okay.